A very good morning, and thanks for coming in for us this morning. So yes, firstly, Theresa May, South Africa has apologized. Obviously, I'm sure many people feel too little too late.
And it's because it's a movie that always plays out. And unfortunately, people get to the point where we are wondering, are these things literally just being missed? Or are they things that are being done deliberately? Out of good faith, I will give the brands, I will give the organizations the benefit of the doubt that it is something that fell through the cracks. And I think the most important thing to be doing at this moment is really not to be defending the intention and the getting it wrong, but really the admitting that it's had the effect. We're seeing the fallout. We're seeing what it is that's happening in our public space. And therefore, how do we now own that which has happened in order to begin to do better as organizations? And this goes beyond Theresa May, it goes beyond Unilever. It's a South Africa thing, it's a corporate South Africa thing, where we are needing to really be looking seriously regarding the structures and how it is that we run our organizations. Because sometimes, even though you may have representation that's sitting around the room, but what are the power dynamics that play out? And therefore, do people feel that they've got the space, they've got the authority, they've got the comfort in order to be able to raise things that they may know instinctively may not land well once we get them out into the public?
And I know, Dominic, we've had the discussion about conscious and unconscious racism, and some people say, there's nothing like unconscious racism. It's South Africa, it's 2020. What more do we have to say about racism in this country to learn our lessons from it? But does this speak, and many people have raised the question of the culture of these organizations, that the reason these things happen is because it's there. It's because you have racism inherent in these organizations. Is it a fair comment to make, that it's the culture?
I think let's take it broader and then bring it to the organizations. Number one, we must realize that we still have a global system of racism that exists. The reason why Black Lives Matter took root not only in the United States but all around the world, and here in South Africa in particular, I think is because people are realizing more and more that we are fighting against the exact same system. You've got South Africans that are now switched on social media, and unfortunately the United States brands everything. And where racism is concerned, the United States is even debating whether racism is something that is perceived or something that is objectively true. And we're starting to see some of those sentiments playing out in the South African space. And so it's realizing that we do exist in the system of racism, and therefore these things, whether you're talking hashtag H&M, hashtag clicks, hashtag coolest monkey in the jungle, these are not a glitch in the system. These are a feature in the system. And so long as you've got a system of racism, we need to really get into grips regarding what's the overhaul that needs to happen at the back in order to ensure that ultimately these things do not come through. So these organizations exist within a historical context that has been based on, race-based identities, where white has been seen as superior, right, beautiful, and the norm, and everybody else who's considered to be non-white, and black in particular, has been deemed to be an aberration from the normal, which is white. And so it really just speaks to the work that we're still needing to do, even within these organizations, as this is a journey.
And speaking of the work that needs to be done, let's look at how we reacted. Let's look at how the EFF reacted to this. And we warned about this on Monday when Dan and I started the show, and had that very emotional intro about all of this. We said, the EFF, please don't do what you did with H&M. Don't detract, because then it becomes about you, and you take away from the very people you say you're doing this on behalf. That doesn't matter now, because now you've become the story. So let's talk about the wrongs of that action and what should have been done.
So Dr. Martin Luther King once said that rights is the language of the unheard. And here in South Africa, people that are unheard, especially those from marginalized communities, have learned very well that in order for our voices to be heard and to be taken seriously, sometimes they resort to violence. I do not condone violence in any circumstance, because whenever we resort to violence, it then becomes a sideshow that takes away from the cause that we're trying to get right. And so with the EFF, the one thing that I'll commend them on is that they do not miss a beat where these matters are concerned.
But they don't use it to the best of their ability.
This is where we need to then have a mobilization, an organization that is disciplined, so that when we do engage in these matters, we can engage in a way we can have far more constructive outcomes, rather than people being caught in the anger and the fear, which is the bread and butter of South Africa on a day-to-day basis. So
as an organization like the Cohesion Collective, what would you advise South Africans do with what has happened? How do we use what has happened I mean, we're always going to have it. Racism is there. People are racist. They talk about it around their dinner tables. We can't change what happens in your home. We can't change what happens within your family. But how do we use what has happened so that we can live harmoniously with one another? You can't change how people think and feel.
This is not a brain issue. It's not an intellectual issue. It's a heart issue. I engaged with a young man a couple of years ago in a training that I ran, and he came to me after the training and said, Dominic, I've grown up in South Africa my entire life, and from the age of 9, we've been taught about HIV and AIDS. I know exactly how AIDS is contracted, I know how it's managed, I know how it's prevented. A couple of months ago, a colleague of mine came out as HIV positive, and for some reason or other, whenever he now makes me a cup of tea or coffee, I cannot physically bring myself to drink it. Often we think that if we educate executives, we educate brand teams, we throw information on them, we throw videos at them, they're going to get this. It doesn't work that way. The work that we do as an organization, and my life's work, is how do we create significant moments where people can have an internal dialogue for themselves and begin to interrogate what are the beliefs that I hold, what are the feelings that I hold as it relates to racism and everything else that we see in our society, because it's only then that change is going to come. I cannot change a grown up. It's a full-time job changing myself. And so the work that we do, and this will be the work that the Clicks group, that Unilever will continue to do for themselves, is the realization that this is a journey that will need to go beyond the conceptual in order to engage at its very base with the hearts and minds where these issues are concerned.
Okay, lots and lots of work to do, like you say. Thanks very much there, Dominic Kgabepe. Very, very fascinating discussion. Yes, human nature is something that's very difficult to change, but we cannot make somebody else's life miserable because of it.